When the Western colonizers came to take over the indigenous people, they said, you indigenous person, you can't tell the difference between yourself and your environment. So how can you govern yourself? And the indigenous people are going, no, I cannot tell the difference between myself and the environment. I know that I have a separate self, but I am also at the same time collectively aware. It's pre-religious. It's literally, it's not even a belief. It's a way of seeing the world. And it's a way of seeing the world that says everything is alive, everything is sentient, everything has a consciousness. It's just a holistic consciousness, which is now not just for the rarefied mystic, but it's becoming something that is being ingrained in the population as a way of being. Aloha from Maui. My name is Jonathan Hammond, and this is Your Superior Self.
Jonathan, my man, my shaman. Thank you so much for taking the time to come back on the show, my brother.
It's always just such a pleasure. You're one of my favorite things favorite people to tune into.
Yeah. Sure, man. We just, I don't know. I could just feel the energy right now. Maybe it's the sun tan that I see on your face right now, coming fresh off the beach in Hawaii. But I just feel like this is going to be an energetic conversation, and I just love where it's going to go because I really want to tap into the work that you're so heavily involved in, connecting us, the modern day human, with a little bit of that indigenous wisdom and technology. And I think it's so important because I feel like that's where I'm being pulled to, more of the ceremonies that our ancestors took place in, because I feel like the modern man needs more of that now than he ever has. He doesn't need another upgrade. He doesn't need another cell phone. He needs some more of that ancient wisdom. Before we get into that, though, I want to know, how do you experience this reality?
Alive, really alive. And what I mean by alive is a sense that I really have adopted a kind of ontological outlook about the world that all our ancestors were seeing the world in the same way. 99% of all of our ancestors. And that's an animistic perspective, meaning that I'm looking at the world as everything in the world as alive and as agentive and as purposeful, with a teleology toward purpose, everything in the natural world, including humans. The idea in indigenous mind, we think of granting personhood to everything in nature. So nature is filled with persons, only some of which are human. And that perspective opens me to conversation, because it's not just when you think of everything being alive and sentient, that means that it has a consciousness. I'm talking about plants and streams and mountains and certainly animals. So in the biodiversity is psychodiversity. All of those minds that are there, and the indigenous people were aware of. There's something called a traditional ecological knowledge, TEK, and what that is that's real knowledge. That is about people who knew what their land needed, knew the personality of the land, knew the spirit of the land, knew what the land would make, how the land would thrive, and they weren't coming at life from a perspective of, I know I'm going to get my next meal. It was a sense of that the land is actually in collaboration and relationship with my well-being, and so there was a gratitude and a reciprocity and a conversation with the land that was reciprocal, and that was in and of itself one in which people walked in gratitude and humility about what is provided to us by the earth. And that's not talking about the new age idea of the noble savages of that is really about how they used to think, and we in the last 2,000 years, a little bit longer than that, but certainly the last 2,000 years have gotten so away from that, and we are so anthropocentric, meaning so human centric, meaning that humans are considered the top of the food chain, and that the natural world is simply a dead storehouse of resources for us, to be exploited and used for us, as opposed to a sense that we are in fact nature. As humans, we are just beings that the earth created, along with the chimpanzees and the mycelial networks, and that we need to correct our relationship with the natural world, and that's what's wrong. And that is, from where I sit, what is underneath everything that is wrong, politically, economically, sociologically, culturally. Because when we began that othering, when in Genesis chapter 1, domination, subdue nature for your end, you humans, and that separation, that domination, that sense that you are entitled to something, began creating a kind of peak human, that some people who are lucky enough to fit into the sort of categories of what a peak human is, that's what we started striving toward. The one God, the peak human, and with every peak there is a fall, and that's where we are right now. And so the return to a lived, dynamic, reciprocal relationship with the natural world would do something to our psyche that would open us to the same kind of dynamic that we would have with others, and that is the seed of the ecological crisis and everything else. So from where I sit, how I experience reality is that it is alive, and I am in relationship to it, and I am doing whatever I can to expand it and to recognize that it wants to grow. It, meaning everything, wants to grow beyond its current circumstances. And so that's where I am.
That's where you're at. And you're here with me now. And I really love that answer. I think that, the awareness that the plants, the trees, the grass, the mountains, all of that has consciousness to it, like an awareness to it. And you have a relationship to that, and you can build a relationship to that, I think, is the most important part of that answer. And I'm just curious, like, so, I mean, have you always had this outlook? Have you always had this philosophy? I mean, it seems like I didn't have that awareness. Like, I took things for granted, especially the mother nature. And to your point, like there's this hierarchy of belief systems of man than nature, right? Like, so, and there's examples in the Bible, and I wonder if they always created that on purpose. You know what I mean? Just kind of like separating man more, or you know what I mean? Like kind of diluting us from our true essence and our true capabilities of being able to tap into Mother Nature to receive more. But like, have you always had this philosophy where we're all connected to that Mother Nature, Mother Gaia?
On some level, I had. I mean, I named my book "The Shaman's Mind," and I didn't really know what I was doing at the time, in kind of naming it that way. But what I was recognizing was that having worked with shamanic peoples on I don't know 4 different continents, was that they all tended to think the same way. At the time when I wrote it, it was really about how they thought about healing, because that's mainly what I do. Is I'm a healer. But what really excited me within the last, I don't know, 3-4 years was all this anthropological research that I've done. There are these amazing young anthropologists. When you think of an anthropologist, so they have their Western scientific mind, and then they go to a culture and they study the culture, and then they report back to the Westerners what they believe. So that's traditional anthropology. But these new anthropologists actually didn't just go to the culture to observe them, but they went to the culture and got inside the ontology of the culture, and they experienced ceremony from inside the ontology of meaning the way in which these people thought, to such an extent that they began having experiences, supernatural experiences, and experience of oneness, and experiences of extraordinary circumstances. And just to say, most of the time when we have extraordinary experiences, they are outside. That's not by coincidence. And these anthropologists found that they didn't want to leave. They went into that culture, into the mind of that culture, to such an extent that they didn't want to leave. And so it wasn't about going back to the Westerners and reporting about what they think. They then started selling the idea that that's a better way to think, that worldview, that cosmology, that way of seeing the world actually makes more sense than ours. And it is a way of seeing the world that is profoundly ancient. It has been people have seen the world that way for hundreds of thousands of years. 99% of all our ancestors, all Homo sapiens, saw the world in this lived, dynamic, relationship with the natural world, and so that's really exciting work, and I think on some level, there are all these young people right now who weren't taught this, for goodness sake, who are ecologically minded and who are waking up to the idea, who are caring about the planet, and all the conversations that the old people aren't having, and I think that's because that we're all alive at this time for a purpose, as has been prophesied about this time. And that purpose is to usher in this new consciousness. But from my perspective, it's an old consciousness. It's a return to something.
Yeah. It's a remembering of who we used to be almost, right? Like, I mean, the more, and there's studies that show the more that you're involved in interacting with your technology, the less interactive you are with Mother Nature. Like, it just, obviously it shows now in the streets, right? Like, I have 3 kids, and it's true. I see it from my own household, where technology is not out as much as they used to. We used to play ball outside. We used to ride our bikes, and go in the woods, build forts. I don't see that rare. It's very rare that I see that, right? And I'm not saying I'm a victim of that now, but I'm just saying, like, I'm conscious of it more. And it's like, all right, well, let's push them outside a little bit more. Let's get them outside. Let's get them off the pads. Let's get them off the PlayStations. Let's get them back out in nature, because there is a connection when you go out there. Like, when you go out for walks, you can just feel it. Like, there's just something, this almost like, oh, I remember, like, okay, I feel it now. There is this, how when somebody's in the room and you feel like, that you're not alone. I feel like that when I'm walking. Like, I just know there's someone else here, but even though I can't see them, like, you can feel it, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. I'm very big right now about greening our spirituality, because, it's not just that it's a nice imaginative idea that the plant actually has a consciousness. It is now scientifically proven that plants are agentive. They have preferences. They create relationships. Plants in the sun will provide nutrients to plants in the shade, even across species. That they remember, that they see, that they feel. There is research done about that. There's a language in the mycelial networks. There are a bunch of minds out there, and a bunch of if you're alive, you're conscious. It might be a different consciousness than ours, but it's conscious, and that is really no different than the consciousness of the spirit guides or the ancestors or the angels. These are other minds that we connect with, and so the idea that when you re-enchant yourself with the minds of the natural world, and it begins in imagination. Absolutely begins in imagination. It begins with entering into that reality. I often say, if you are thinking you're going to take a walk in the forest because you want an answer to a question, and that forest is going to give you an answer, you take a walk in the forest will start talking. If you don't have that reality, it's a nice walk in the forest. So we can enter into a reality where we are in actual conversation and relationship with the natural world. And in doing so, we up the game of our spirituality, because it means that in the natural world, are all those supernatural forces that we as spiritual seekers are trying to attune to. And so they're all over the place. So it's not just biodiversity, it's psychodiversity. It's all of those minds.
Sure. I was reading a story. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was reading a story, a Native American book about rain men, like coming into the land and doing their dances. and creating rain for the crops. And it was fascinating to me because it was like, oh, it's been dry here. It's it was like my Western mindset was like, all right, I guess they're bringing somebody in here to kind of like fix the land to get it to rain. And their perspective was they weren't fixing the land at all. They were bringing this rain man in to fix the vibration of the people there. They were there doing their dances to fix the frequency of the people, to get them back in frequency, in coherence with the land so that it could rain. And I was like, holy crap. Like, I didn't even think about that, man. Like those people were out of sync, out of resonance with that land. And so that's why they created this drought, and they brought this rain man in to get them back in line and vibration with that land. It blew my mind for a second. It was like a totally different perspective.
Yeah, the origin of the shamanic journey came about because of language, because with the emergence of language came the ability for humans to create mentally constructed overlays onto reality, onto the organic here and now, i.e. humans could start lying because we could now tell stories. And so the shamanic journey emerged because the original medicine men and women realized that we needed to have a way to always connect back to the truth, back to authentic essence that is nature. And so, and when a shamanic journey is nothing more than an attunement with an animal, an animal spirit, a plant spirit, something from the natural world, and it's a spiritual connection that we make. That is the shamanic journey, and that actually came about in order to safeguard humans from themselves as the young beings on the planet. We are the youngsters. The plant people and the stone people and the animal people. They were here before us. And there's a famous Native American story that's about the animal people went to the stone people and the plant people, and they said, these humans are assholes, and we want to kill them. We want to kill them all. And the stone people and the plant people who had been around longer, are closer to Mother Earth, and who have less egos, said, animal people, we agree they're assholes, but we can't do that. But what we can do is provide them with medicine. And so any human that asks for our medicine to attune with us will receive medicine from us so that they can learn what they are and what they're not. And so, and that's why there are all these associations with animal totems and connections with nature, and that they speak to the human experience, because the natural world sort of set it up that way for us. We just do not listen.
Sure.
We just don't.
Well, when we go into ceremonies, can you talk a little bit about ceremonies and what you've been involved in, and like how do we cultivate deeper relationships through those ceremonies? What do ceremonies do for us, and like what exactly does like a ceremony that you perform look like?
Nothing is real unless it is believed and lodged into and understood by the unconscious mind. It's not real. So I can say I'm a spiritual teacher, but unless my unconscious mind is on board with me being a spiritual teacher, I'm not a spiritual teacher. So it is. So in the same way that the unconscious mind has memorized green light means go, and the outward world reflects green light means go, at some point I had to memorize the idea, and lodge it into my unconscious that I was indeed a spiritual teacher, and the outside world now reflects spiritual teacher. So ceremony is about, because it is about all the things that speak to the unconscious mind, sound and metaphor and dance and ritual and altered states, etc. So ceremony brings us into rapport with the unconscious mind, which is where we can make change. So that's why you hear things like people. I don't truly believe this exactly, but that people have a ayahuasca ceremony and it's 10 years of therapy. I don't really think. I think if you did 10 years of therapy, the ayahuasca ceremony is going to be amazing for you. But I don't just think that alone will do it. I think you need more context than that. But the idea is it's speaking to the unconscious, and it's getting the unconscious to believe something about itself that it previously has not believed, or remove something about itself that obscures its true nature.
Well, you said something in there that's really fascinating for me and trying to become a more conscious creator. You
Yeah.
said you had to tell your subconscious that you were a spiritual teacher, and then your reality reflected that. Like, give me an example of that, and how did you do that?
I had an idea. Thought I was supposed to be a spiritual teacher. I wasn't a spiritual teacher, but and we do this with all kinds of things. I want to be a cardiologist. I'm not a cardiologist, So I then have to go through a process through, and in this culture, we don't give clout and legitimacy to process. It's all insta, But there is a process to manifestation. The idea that what we focus on with attention invites in energy to bring about the nearest available equivalent of what we put our focus and attention on. This is basic manifestation technique. So I wasn't a spiritual teacher, but I thought I should be, and I went through a process, and I began memorizing through the actions that I took, and the mentors, and the people that I showed up for, and the classes that I took, and the trainings that I took, and the white knuckling my way through being a spiritual teacher, even though I wasn't sure. And eventually over time, spiritual teacher lodged into my identity. And now I'm a spiritual teacher, and we can all do that, but I think that there are two things. Having a tolerance for process, I think that's something that we really have to allow ourselves to be in. And also we got to dial down the doubt in anything. Anytime we change the status quo for ourselves, anytime we change the status quo, anytime we endeavor to become something that we're not, the superego, the inner critic starts chattering away, and doubt comes up. It will come up, doubt and fear, and that's fine. But it has to be turned. It's got to be at least 49%. If it's 51%, it won't happen. If you can get it down to 8% or less, that's even better. But the idea that voice is legitimate, and that voice acts like it's trying to protect you, but it's actually keeping you from the thing that you are going to become. So it will come up. That inner critic, that doubt, that fear will come up, but we have to recognize it and go ahead anyway. It's like feed the potential, starve the doubt. Feed the potential, starve the doubt. That's how you become your version of spiritual teacher, whatever that is.
Sure.
Yeah.
So when you become that, right, when the subconscious believes that, when you finally become the spiritual teacher, like, tell me, how did your reality change?
Well, let me say this. It wasn't like I think I'll be a spiritual teacher. It was really coming from a place of it was a calling. It was part of my purpose. We all have a calling. We all have a purpose, just like everything in nature. The dandelion has a purpose to be the dandelion. And in being the dandelion, it's providing oxygen and a home for insects and a whole bunch of other things. So everything in nature is following its purpose. And in following its purpose is automatically connected to the all at the same time. So we all have an individual purpose to follow. That is what the Native Americans call our original instructions. That sense of, I'm supposed to do this, I'm not supposed to do that. This feels like the right thing. This doesn't feel like the right thing. It's a felt sense within us. So no matter how lost we are, if you want to return to your original instructions and find your purpose, it's that felt sense that says, this is the right, this feels right. This doesn't feel right. This feels like animates me. This doesn't feel like it animates me. And as simple as that is, if you really do that, you find it. But we all have it. So I had a purpose. And when you follow your purpose, two things happen. The spirits are all over it because that's all they want for us, because they're not going to reward something which is unnatural. They're not going to reward, I don't know, the spirits are all over you having a car unless that car is really part of your purpose. But when we follow our purpose, we get all kinds of spiritual help. That's the first thing. And what opens up, because we are in flow, i.e., we are following our purpose, as is everything in nature, we get a lot of yeses. And that's what happened to me when I became a spiritual teacher. I just kept getting a lot of yeses, and it was just because it was just saying, this is the right direction. I'm actually in flow, So we all really do have that. Let me say one last thing. When I say purpose, I mean how your existence serves the collective. How you don't have to be a spiritual teacher like me or a podcaster like you or someone public. It's just about how my existence serves the collective. How do I make the world a better place? How do I make my family more thrive in a different way or in a better way? How do I make my community become more self-esteemed? Whatever it is. But we all have one.
Sure. Did you have to go on a vision quest to find that purpose, or was that just like a natural intuitive calling? You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, totally. Oh yeah, I've been running around. I've been running away to not so much lately, but yeah, I did my the ayahuasca journeys in Brazil, and I did my sitting on a mountain crying in Sedona, and I did my then I did my trainings in remote locations, and all of that, and my quests. In fact, one of them was actually here, right outside at on the volcano, where I really got I read about it in my book, but I had a really formative spiritual experience that was very clear. It was about, I was in a different life and a different career, and it was about the message was very clearly, you got to change your life. And so yeah, I've certainly done that, and I do encourage everyone to, if you're called. If you're not called to do that, you don't necessarily have to do it. But yeah, that's absolutely something that I've needed to do for sure. Yeah.
sure. So when you create space, when you create these sacred spaces, and you set the container for men or women, whoever your clients are, I'm really drawn to men's work because I feel like we are on this cusp of change, healing the wounded masculine.
Yeah.
When you're creating these containers, what does that look like? Like, how are you calling in these spirits? How are you calling in these entities? And who are you working with?
Well, now it's automatic, because we're talking 30 clients a week for the last almost 20 years. So it's really, they're just there, and I just kind of know what to say. In terms of men's work, which I think is, I love the fact that you're getting into it, because it is the thing right now. Every man that I work with needs it, and men have been given an entirely incorrect idea about what being a man is. And so we were talking about earlier, but I'll just say it again. The main god that I work with, or the spiritual deity that I work with in terms of men's work, is a pagan god called Cernunnos, or Pan, which is half animal, half man, which is to signify that this being has integrated its bestial nature. And when you think of sacred masculinity, that is about you just think of the sun, the most kind of masculine object in the universe. It is about light. It is about the gift of awareness, shining the light of awareness onto whatever. And so masculinity is about that awareness, the giving the gift of one's attention and light towards the other's expansion. And Pan, or Cernunnos, they're considered the generative principle of nature. So they're the masculine aspect that makes nature go. So there's, if you think of Pan is sort of, lives in the forest, and and is walking around with usually an erect phallus, and and the maidens are sort of at the no, Pan is in the forest, and they're at the corners, and they're and sort of tittering and knowing that he's there. And when they're ready, they go and they get ravaged by him. And the idea is not really a sexual one. It's about being ravaged and expanded into one's own ecstasy and one's own bliss and one's own self-awareness. And the idea that the sacred masculine is about whether or not you're placing that sacred attention on a male, female, whatever. But the idea is that I'm looking. So in my practice, I'm looking. I'm in my masculine, in that my intention is to expand you however I can. Now, part of the sacred masculine is the attunement with my feminine enough to know how to expand you, because I have because I can feel into you enough, and I have enough EQ to kind of know how to expand you. So it's the integration of both. That's really the sacred masculine, and then of course, on the other end, the sacred feminine is about the woman, or the feminine polarity, because it could be male, female, it doesn't matter, being self-esteemed enough to actually receive the light of that awareness and be expanded. So when you think of healthy or sacred masculinity, sacred femininity, underneath both of them requires a journey in self-esteem, because the masculine has to feel their own sense of empowerment, their own sense of purpose, that they are to expand the feminine, and the feminine have to actually feel the sense that they are to be expanded. And I don't mean male female, because it goes back and forth, and we both have both. But that's really important in this culture. What we've been taught is that men take and women cope. That's what we've been taught, and men don't have to feel, and mommy woman, she gets to do all the feeling, because you don't have to, because because you don't, and you don't have to, you can't take it, and that's what needs to change. And then we have, voila, adults, actual adults who feel their feelings, who feel a sense of their own power, who feel a sense of their own agency, who take action on their own behalf, who receive when they're supposed to receive, who know that they're supposed to have the self-esteem to receive from life when they need to be expanded. And we're in a different cosmology in terms of how we relate to each other, because it's about everyone expanding and receiving, as is evidenced in nature. I was saying before we got on the call, it's very horny out there, and that's part of that's just what's going on out there. And so if we can recognize that we're supposed to be a part of that, and again, take it out of the sexual. It's sex is only, I only mean it in terms of inner power, and inner activation toward my own unfoldment or yours, and that's what men need right now. And women need to know that man is out there doing that work, and she better get her self-esteem together, because he's not going to be interested in you if you won't allow him to expand you.
Sure. What do you think?
Some female, and I don't mean it that way. I just want to,
sure. Yeah. Well, what's the resistance, do you think? Like, if you post a video of a man doing men's work at a retreat, there's a lot of negativity that's thrown that way, right? I feel like there's a shadow still. There's a resistance to this work. What do you think that is?
Men aren't acculturated to be vulnerable with other men. That's one thing. Men are acculturated to be in an unconscious power dynamic with other men, whether or not it's been set up or not. We are in. I mean, this is a bigger sort of sociological thing, but we are in hierarchical structures. I read something the other day of an activist she was talking about, she was a political activist, and she was talking about going to jail, and she went to jail for a couple of weeks, and famous author and all that, and she talked about that there was food, but there was worse food, and there was a roommate, but there was a worse roommate, and there was a cell, but there was a worse cell, and the idea that there was this reward and punishment that was set up, that was by people above her, who didn't have any merit to have this power over her. And she was likening that really to the hierarchical structures that we live in, that we are in right now, that is, the sort of capitalist patriarchy. And so even men, even though they maybe have a better seat at the table in that, they're still a part of it, because at the end of the day, there is someone in that structure, is someone over them, and they end up either being, the company man, or the good son, or the rebel, or something, but they're still in that, And so when men get together and away from all of that background of hierarchy, they don't know how to be with each other, or it's too vulnerable, or it's but that's how we get rid of that hierarchy. That we stop doing that, so it's that. So that, I think that's what the resistance is.
Sure. I went to a men's retreat, and we had this, what was it? It was like this practice where we stared at another man for like a couple minutes and looked into their eyes, and dude, it was so uncomfortable. Like, I could feel the programs just running through my body as I'm staring at this man in his face. like all the voices, why are you doing it? Like, why are you looking at the guy in the face? What's wrong with you? And we did like 4 rounds of it, and by the 4th round, like I could do it fine, like no questions asked, I could do it. And then I started having these realizations that I'm it's like a mirror almost, like I'm just staring at myself from a different point of perspective. And then we had like a little session where we had a conversation, like, and we really unreleased like a lot of pent up, like, energy and trauma, just having a conversation, like a really authentic, like really in the moment present conversation. And there was so much like energetic release and emotional releases that were tied to it. And I just come to this huge realization that I don't even look people in the eyes. Like when I'm having a conversation with them, usually like out in public or in social settings, like I very rarely, and people do this all the time. And I mean, someone listening to this now, just think about how many times, like when you're actually having a conversation with someone, like you're looking them dead in the eye and stay there, or, without wandering, without looking over here, saying a sentence or a word, and then looking over here, like really be present and notice how often your eyes, like, don't even connect, like that intimacy there, right? Like we're just so programmed to like look for that dopamine hit, or like look for things to like make us feel better or comfortable. Like we're on our phones so much. Like, I mean, just being present in the moment, like there's a lot of resistance to that. I find that so fascinating that as a man, it was so hard for me, the programs that were running, to look another man in his eyes and just have a conversation with him.
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, first of all, I love your vulnerability and sharing that, and the idea that I could feel the programs running. That just really feels like something. The big thing with men is really about, I'm having a feeling, and it shouldn't be happening. And so because it shouldn't be happening, and it's usually a feeling where I don't feel good about myself, I don't feel strong, I don't know what to do, I don't know, whatever that is. And so that becomes a kind of chronic avoidance, and a chronic avoidance of what's happening, as if men are just supposed to be this kind of, ever erect superhero that's got the answers to everything, et cetera, et cetera. So what ends up happening is that all that stuff gets relegated to the shadow and doesn't get looked at, and gets avoided. And then everything feels scary, because now I've got all of this stuff that I'm not acknowledging. And a basic psychological principle is that the first step in addressing any problem is the acknowledgement of the problem, But when non-acknowledgement of a problem is chronic, that's the formula for shame. And that's the formula for not wanting to look another man. And of course, we have a perceived idea that the other man has got it figured out, and that they're seeing the thing that we're, but that's it, I would say the biggest thing I deal with my clients is about feel your feelings, get inside your body, stop avoiding, and avoidance sucks, and avoidance will, something that is chronically avoided over time will, I promise, blow up. It will come out, even the idea of, it just happened today, even the idea of road rage, if you really think about, when that happens to me, and I think, you're so dysregulated, you're so angry about something that has nothing to do with me, that you have to take it out on a stranger, because you have so not looked at your life. And the way in which what you're doing to me right now has to do with your wife, or your money, or or how you think of yourself in terms of your own empowerment or potency, and all of that. And it's coming out in this way. And hopefully it won't lead to an accident. But if you keep doing that, it will. At least a metaphoric accident, So the avoidance of feelings is huge with men. It's absolutely huge. And it's about, I'm having a feeling and this shouldn't be happening. And it's so important that we recognize that we all are scared. We all don't know. We all have moments of doubt. We all next to that guy don't feel like, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the acknowledgement of that is the beginning of humanizing the man, and right sizing the man, and actually giving him the sensitivity that he needs to serve his woman or his lover and the world. Because without that, I'm just hiding. I'm not expanding you. I don't have the power to expand you because I'm riddled in shame. You know?
Sure. How do they express, like, how do they express that emotion? Like when they figure it out, they're having an emotion and it's okay for them to have that emotion. Like, how do you teach them to express that? Like I've seen different modalities, like the primal screaming and things of that nature. Like, have you found anything that helps you like have like a cathartic release of that emotion or pent up trauma?
Yeah, I mean, there are a bunch of ways to do it. There are too many to name. I've had people do a rage journal. I've had people just do a journal. I said to people, go take off your clothes and go bang a drum in the woods. I've told people to rub their bellies. Release. Oftentimes when we are holding emotion, it's 2 inches below the navel. It's really down there in the second chakra, which is where emotion originates. So I'm often telling clients, go rub your belly, to soften that up and let it be. There are all different kinds of ways to do it. Certainly, talk, confidants. There are psychedelics. I'm trained in psychedelic facilitation that can really help. Although that tends to be after things have been actually been worked with for a little bit. Otherwise, there can be some flooding and stuff like that goes on. But there are all kinds of different ways. But the main thing is that you just start having an awareness about it, and start having an awareness about your habitual reaction to clamp down on it. I'll tell you a really quick story. I had a client, very good looking, 6'5", and he said he was golfing. He was doing golfing with a couple guys he didn't really know very well. And he tells me this story in a session with me about how he was riddled with this anxiety. He was a fine golfer, riddled with this anxiety, riddled with this sense that he's going to be found out, just so embarrassed and so shamed and felt so small, etc. And I thought, what's going on with this guy? He's so good looking. He's so tall. He's so and so I went to my supervisor, someone that I speak to about all my clients. Said, what's going on with this guy? He said, he's just a straight guy.
There you go. There you go. So you said something about psychedelics, and I'm really getting into breath work too. So I was wondering, like, when I get into deep states of breath work, like I haven't really worked with plant medicines and psychedelics really. But when I get into deep states like of the different rounds of breath work, man, I feel like I am up against the veil. Like I feel like I can really just almost jump over that. What are the different realms? Like, what is the differences between psychedelics? What you're experiencing there, is that the imaginative realm and like, even like breath work, like, are they the same realms and the same entities that are working hand in hand with our, creating our futures, creating what we're trying to manifest?
I wouldn't say the same, although I wouldn't say not the same. I think, the breath work was developed as a alternative to LSD by Stan Grof, the father of transpersonal psychology. And that was to do something to facilitate an altered state that was similar to the LSD expansion without the actual drug, because there was some, obviously law issues that had to be dealt with. My training is I don't do psychedelics hardly at all, but I wanted to train in them. What I have found is that psychedelics, generally speaking, in a true therapeutic context. Now, there is the context of I'm going to have an ecstatic experience, which to me is called getting high. Sorry, but that's what it is. If it's not something that's making you a better person or improving you in some way or improving your psychological understanding, your attunement with spirit or the world, it's just getting high. But what I found with psychedelics is that when we've been at it for a while, when we've named the problem and we've looked at it and we're working on it, and it showed up again, Jonathan, this week, and showed up, that like when we really feel like something just needs a little bit something to get through, so it really lets go, that's when I find that psychedelics are really helpful. Generally speaking, though, if you think of what is healing really? Healing is about that we had a natural state and we've been acculturated or wounded or taught out of our natural state, our original instructions, who we fundamentally are. And so we go to a healer to go figure out how to get back there. So when you take plant medicine, you are taking in nature, you're taking in the mother, and so it tends to have an effect toward that aim, So I mean, I kind of don't need. I'm so out there. I don't really need the. I don't
So
really
out there.
so out there. I'm so cosmological where I am right now in terms of, bridging ecology and psychology and spirituality, all and culture all into one thing. That I don't really need them. But I think the other thing is I think that they can be a good opener. They can be a good opener for people, because if there is a sense of, I feel like there's spirit, I feel like there's energy, I feel like there's consciousness, but I don't have proof, and I'm too right brain to right brain. Is that what it is? Yeah, right brain to then they can really be an opener, because you can have an experience that you can't go back from.
Sure.
So it can be helpful for that too.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think it's people just think it's the cure all now. I think that it's like one size fits all, like method or thought process behind plant medicines, and I don't think it's that way at all. I think that you have to prepare yourself for that.
It's the insta culture. No sense of process. I need the thing right away, and I got to, and I'm supposed to, even the idea of like young people, they have this device where at 20 years old they're supposed to put something on the device that says, this is what I am, and make themselves into a product, and and that's not the way it works. And I'm not downing young people. I'm talking about that we are less process oriented than ever in terms of excellence and artistry and becoming something that's substantive and real. It takes mentors and time and hours of practice and all of that.
Sure.
And,
I think the algorithm is programming us now. Like young people are just like, who are they? Like, they don't even know who they are. Like, they're just so quick to get on a device and like go through these different social media apps and platforms, see what other people are doing. Like, I don't know if they're really getting in touch with who they are, like at the basic essence of who they want to be. Like, they just see a lot, look, I'm just saying, like, I'm a victim of this as well. Like, growing up and having these, these idols and people that I wanted to be like, and having a realization in my 30s of like, there's got to be something more. You get to the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you're like, this isn't it. This isn't going to make me happy. And so you go for, self-actualization, self-transcendence. And I'm still on that journey. I don't think that journey ever ends. I think it's just a forever evolving state. But I mean, to your point, that people want it now. And I think there's something so special about devotion, like cultivating this sacred connection to whatever you want to call that. If you want to be a scientist and call it the 0 point field, you can call it that. If you want to be very religious and call it God, you can do that. But there is something so important about devotion. And I want to know, Jonathan, like, how has devotion changed your relationship with Mother Gaia, whomever you call that entity, whoever you call God? Like, how has it cultivated a stronger relationship?
Well, I'm lucky because I'm obsessed. I'm because I'm just it's just I have a whole day of clients, and then you're going to find me on the beach with a book reading about spirituality. I've been that way my whole life. Even my main archetype is student, even more than teacher. So like I'm a little obsessed. So I'm lucky that way. I want to share something with you because I just thought I'm doing a program. This will have aired by the time the program will have aired by the time this is on. But I'm doing a program with the Shift Network, which is a very fancy platform.
Big time, my man.
Big time, right. And I had a meeting with them a couple days ago, and they said the most unbelievable thing to me. They said, so just so you know, the course is non-refundable as soon as I start talking on the first, and it's a 7-week course. And they said on the first course, you'll have 60% of the people who bought the $350 course. By the 7th course, you'll have 20% or less, just so you know. And then, so not take it personally, this is just our averages. And I thought that's what's wrong with everything, because the idea that we cannot follow through, and particularly with spirituality, because spirituality, truly living a spiritual life, is about the confrontation of the compartmentalization of leading a spiritual life. I'm spiritual except for. I'm spiritual, I'm spiritual except not in this instant. I'm not spiritual with my taxes. I'm not spiritual with my money. I'm not spiritual with, with my addiction. I'm not, but the idea is, and it's not we have to be perfect, but the idea is that we are in it, and that we are always looking and attuning to that context. I did a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and the guy said, he said, "What's that altar back there? What do you do with that altar back there?" I said, "You know what? Not a whole lot, except every time I look at it, it reminds me of a reality that I need to remember again today, and I need to show up for again today." And that's so much of what is needed right now. That's why they call it spiritual practice. And sometimes you go and you lay on the floor, at least is what I do, and you put your hands on your chest and you say, "Come to me," and nothing really comes. And you know what? You do it again tomorrow. But it will. And you stop. All my clients, they know that I charge $25 more a session if they say woo woo. I will not allow it because that just is about undermining what is true. So I don't allow that context. I can't stand that context. It's just it's made to apologize to the cynics, and I just think it's really important that we name that we're that, and that we name that we are that we don't deal with coincidences, we deal with synchronicities. That coincidence is a sign in a unitive universe trying to get to you, and you can textualize it like that because it's there to light your path. And the less you do look for the signs, the less you do look for the ways in which life is in reciprocity with your journey, the less the spirits go, I can't work with this person. I could send him the person that would lead him to the blah blah blah, but he ain't looking, So until he is, I'm just going to be quiet, And so the less we have a spiritual context, the less the spirits know what to do with us, But when our eyes are open to it, then they go, now I have something to work with because their eyes are open.
Yeah, I heard a spiritual teacher, a Native American spiritual teacher, say that like the spirits stop working with us because we stop calling on them.
Or we stop listening.
We stop listening. So I've been reading the Gospel of Thomas recently, and I think this is just funny. I try to remember this every day. It says, "Whoever searches must continue to search until they find." It doesn't say stop searching. It says until you find. Mm-hmm. And in Dr. Singer's book, The Road Less Traveled, he talks about how the path isn't meant for everyone. Like the spiritual path is not meant for everyone. Some people will travel a very long, like a very far distance, but they will still stop. They are okay with being mediocre. They're not made to become God. And it's like, you can't stop. You can't stop the devotion. You can't stop building and expanding your capacity to receive, because it's like one day by the grace of God, something will come to you. And like, that will be worth it. I mean, every mystic, every person that I read is talking about this yearning and this wanting to be loved by something greater than themselves and the connection to that. And they'll do anything for that. And they cry. And it's like, spirituality isn't this like rainbows and butterflies and sunshine. It's like, it is a freaking path, man. Like it is wretched sometimes. And it's like this, but it's also like in the Gospel of Thomas, it also talks about this. It's like, what if your spirit remembers that connection? That's why you go on the path to begin with. Mm-hmm. And so I just like to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, first of all, let me just say, there for you Trey Downs can't. I don't know that everyone can't stop. I definitely have a conundrum about it in my own head, because I see people and I go, you're not going to go any further, and it's being presented to you, and you're just not going to do it. And a lot of times it's because it's just too counterintuitive, or they're afraid of money, or it's just too painful, or something. sometimes it's a mystery to me because I go, it's right there. It's right there for you to take, but you're just not going to do it, So, I feel fortunate that I kind of do have that, and I would only say to people who think that this is where I can't go any further. This is where I would actually have to change my life. This is where I'd actually have to leave my relationship. This is where I'd actually have to take the leap of faith. And the leap of faith is always the big fear. What's going to be, where's my health insurance and where's my money? That is what's after the leap of faith, always. And and those are scary things. Except that I don't know. I've never, in however long I've been doing this, seen anyone take the leap of faith where money bit them in the ass or they didn't have health insurance. Not once, not one time ever. But it is the fear. Among many other fears. So. I can only say that I don't know why some people bail on themselves, and so my wish for everyone is just to know that I guess the question I think you have to ask yourself is, what the hell else are you going to do with yourself? What the hell else are you going to do with yourself? Because it will be bothering you your whole life, if there's something unlived, so I just want to say that, and I want to just name for your audience that if you're modeling anything, it's that you can't not do it, Sure. And it's really important. It's really important, and if we are lucky enough to feel that way about ourselves, then spread that around, spread that medicine around,
Sure. Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it's, I mean, look, I have evolved as a spiritual seeker my entire life. Like, I used to be very dogmatic and religious, in my teens and in high school. And then now I'm totally different. But I think that is the evolution of who I am, my path, my journey. I don't, look, I'm not sitting here pointing fingers and say what you're doing is wrong or what you're worshiping is wrong. I think it's all needed to get you to where you need to be at the end of it anyway. I think people get scared of that leap of faith, is to your point, of the fear of the unknown, of what's next, right? Like, my body has been so used to the programs that have been running up to this point, and it's like, what would it feel like after this? It's the unknown. I have no idea. So yeah, I'll talk a good game up to this point, but taking that leap of faith, it's like, ugh, I don't know, man. I just don't know what that lies over there. I really love my relationships over here. Can't I just be spiritual over here in a box? Can't I just do the things over here and then have wishful thinking that maybe one day, somehow I'll experience that. I can read. I'll just read the books. I just feel like if I read the books, I'll know what spirituality is. I'm not interested in that anymore, bro. I am not. I read the menu. I want the steak. You know what I mean?
Well, let me, the reason why I'm earth-based, the reason why shamanism, is my path, is because there are some things in nature that really help us with how to be. Nothing in nature, there's suffering in nature, but nothing in nature moves towards suffering, and nothing in nature stays in suffering. Nature is wildly interested in that which will bring it more life, and wildly disinterested in that which won't. Nature is in a constant state of self-advocacy, and at the same time, in that self-advocacy, by virtue of what it individually is, serves the collective. Nature doesn't have low self-esteem. Nature doesn't starve itself. Nature doesn't martyr itself. Nature wants what it wants and is okay with that. Nature opens to the sun if that's what it needs, and opens to the rain if that's what it needs, and doesn't deny itself what it needs. And so there, if you just tune into the spontaneity that is the expression of nature, the unapologetic isness that is everything in nature, and realize that I am supposed to align myself with those feelings. If there are three things that this culture has legitimized and normalized, it is suffering and coping and people pleasing. Those three things they've even been given a kind of religious connotation, that they are, somehow that you're being a good person, and in shamanism we don't give a shit about being good, we care about being true. And that is a fundamental difference. Even the idea of morals are simply dogmatic rules, but ethics are about the alleviation or the avoidance of suffering. And that's when you start dealing with ethics and not morals, it starts becoming very middle, and it starts becoming very much about your own sense of what is good and right for you, based on your felt sense, based on your experience, based on that which is going to bring you more life. And that's a really, really important distinction that we're making. And so if any, I am going to say this, if any religious doctrine is encouraging you toward suffering, run, because it is unnatural. And if anything is encouraging you to pull away from your body, run. Because that's what's wrong with everything. Go ahead.
What's the misconceptions about animism besides that they think it's some category on a porn site? Like what have you spoken with about? I don't know. I mean, I just feel like people, when I first heard about animism, I was like, what the hell is that? Right? Like,
so it's pre-religious. It's literally, it's not even a belief. It's a way of seeing the world. And it's a way of seeing the world that says everything is alive, everything is sentient, everything has a consciousness, everything has preferences, everything is in relationship to me, as everything is of great spirit. Everything is a part of my long body, in other words, that I'm self-identifying with everything, and I'm in relationship with everything. It's just that. Children do it all the time. You have to talk a child out of believing that the teddy bear doesn't have a consciousness. Well, we teach them out of that. But I would even go as far as to say, I mean, I heard this. I wish I made it up, but I did. But I heard it. It resonated so deeply that animism is actually the natural state of health, because we are seeing an alive world that is in reciprocity and conversation with us. For goodness sake. So that's all it is. That's all it is. So animism is, it predates ancestor worship, let alone spirit guides or anything like that. It is about that everything in the natural world, including us, is of great spirit. And so out of animism came Brother Mountain, Sister Bear, Grandfather Fire. Even in the Ojibwa tribe, the word for grandfather and the word for rock are the same word, because they think of even the rocks as relations, and when the Western colonizers came and to take over the indigenous people, their reason for doing it, and they're legitimizing themselves to do it, because they said, you indigenous person, you can't tell the difference between yourself and your environment, so how can you govern yourself? And the indigenous people are going, no, I cannot tell the difference between myself and the environment. I know that I have a separate self, but I am also at the same time collectively aware, and I have both. And so I am actually of a higher consciousness. And the big consciousness that all the spiritual shows are talking about, the higher consciousness we're moving into, is just that. It's just a holistic consciousness, which is now not just for the rarefied mystic, but it's becoming something that is being ingrained in the population as a way of being. And the only thing I will add to it is that, as opposed to the non-dual Buddhist idea in the consciousness of it's all one, from my perspective, if we could get it in our body and go, it's bodily, physically, materially all one, in addition to the consciousness, then we're off to the races in terms of saving the planet, saving each other.
Sure. I have to ask you, like, where do you think we're going or heading, like, as far as like humanity and deepening that relationship with that spirit? Like, do you see it being more decentralized in communities where, like, you're seeing more retreats done, like, adapting or adopting the indigenous tribes, cultures, the medicine, the ceremonies, the rituals that they were performing into these smaller communities, and I guess garnering or creating more support or connection with that with those entities or with the one spirit?
Yeah, I think that that the authoritarian uh, uh, context for obedience, trying to get everyone to be obedient to it, that's dying, that's crumbling. And I think in face of it is freedom. And so I do think that we are moving toward more freedom. And I think it's going to be highly individual. I do think it's probably going to be a little bit more community based. I think it's going to be about unplugging from big cultural ideas that we unconsciously have adhered to for so long. Um, I think it's going to be about people waking up spiritually. And people are waking up spiritually. That's just happening. But I think it where we are right now in July 2024, we are at the height of burgeoning freedom and authoritarianism fighting, and they're just holding on, because it can't. There's this new thing happening. There's this, and even young people and their ecological mindedness. All these kids saying I'm non-binary, which has to do with not sexuality, but I don't fit with your polarized worldview, and I am a precious being who is incarnated at this time to say that there are these new beings who don't fit with this old way. And so I think all that's happening. I think it's going to take time. I think it might be I heard this phrase which I loved: pockets of sanity. You find your pockets of sanity for a little bit, until it takes hold. But that's sort of what I think is going on.
Sure.
I think we'll know a lot more when this airs, actually.
Jonathan, man, I could talk to you for days, brother. Where can people find you? How can they connect?
JonathanHammond.com. That's the easiest way. Yeah, all my classes are on there. That's the easiest way to connect with me. I got a mailing list if you want to sign up for a mailing list. I see people privately. I'm pretty full right now, but if you become a squeaky wheel, probably happen.
There you go.
Yeah.
Lastly, is there anything on your heart that you feel like you need to share right now with the audience, and just to spread some more of that wisdom?
That when we talk about ecology, when we talk about the shit show of the culture, we talk about all that stuff, it can feel overwhelming, and it can feel for some people like, what can I do? And you can do a whole lot by not even leaving your house. And that is, if you think of yourself, we are one organism. That is the Gaia theory, that the earth is one organism, and that there are individual entities that contribute to the one organism. And so that means that we are each an individual cell in that organism. And so without ever leaving your house, if you can make your cell as healthy and loving and complete and abundant and purposeful as it can be, you are doing your part to contribute to the all. It's just about each of us doing our part. Some of us have bigger mouths than others, hence why I'm here and Trey's doing what he's doing. But generally speaking, that's really all you need to do. Just clean up your own little cell, and that contributes to the health of the entire organism.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for just sharing the space with me and just really deeply connecting on this topic.
You got it. Aloha, everyone. Thanks, Trey.